The rec room remained silent for what felt like hours after Commander Hyo-sung finished his story about Min-ho Lee. The young Zentari officers sat in their chairs like statues carved from stone. Their minds struggled to process what they had heard about one human soldier defeating 300 of their best warriors. Private Taeho was the first to break the heavy silence that filled the room. His red skin had turned almost white with shock, and his voice shook as he spoke. "Commander, surely, this Min-ho was just one extraordinary human among billions of ordinary weak ones." Hyo-sung walked slowly back to the table where the tablets full of human mythology lay scattered like forgotten treasures. He picked up one device that showed the story of Atlas, the mythical human who held up the entire sky on his shoulders. "That is exactly what I thought too," Hyo-sung said quietly. "Until I met Dr. Soo-jin Kwon on planet Kepler 186F. The young soldiers leaned forward despite their fear. They could see in their commander's eyes that he had more impossible stories to tell, stories that would challenge everything they believed about their human enemies. Dr. Soo-jin was a medical officer at a human field hospital. Hyo-sung continued, "She was supposed to be a healer, not a warrior. But when my forces attacked her facility, she held off an entire Zentari assault battalion for 8 hours, using nothing but medical supplies, and her knowledge of chemistry." Bo-ram shook her green head in disbelief. "Commander, how could one medical worker fight against a whole battalion?" Hyo-sung picked up another tablet. This one showing the story of Hercules fighting the many-headed Hydra monster. "She turned medicines into poisons that made our warriors sick and confused. She used surgical equipment to create traps that could cut through our armor. She mixed cleaning chemicals to make smoke bombs that blinded our sensors." The commander continued his story while the young aliens listened with growing horror. "She knew exactly which pressure points to hit to paralyze creatures 3 times her size. She used her medical knowledge to target our weak spots in ways that military training never taught her. She turned a hospital into a fortress that cost us 200 good soldiers." Dalsu stared at the tablet in Hyo-sung's hands, the one showing Hercules performing his impossible tasks. "Commander, you mentioned other humans. What about this captain you spoke of?" Hyo-sung set down the Hercules tablet and picked up another one that showed the story of a human prophet who could see the future. "Captain Dong-hyun-im on planet Wolf 1061C. He said with a voice full of reluctant respect, that human somehow convinced half of my invasion force to question their orders, just by talking to them." The young officers exchanged worried glances. They had been taught that Zentari minds were too strong and disciplined to be influenced by enemy propaganda. Dong-hyun used psychology like a weapon. Hyo-sung explained. He understood how our minds worked better than we understood ourselves. He made logical arguments that turned our own thoughts against us. He convinced 40 trained warriors to lay down their weapons without firing a single shot. Taeho whispered, "How is such a thing possible?" Hyo-sung picked up yet another tablet, this one showing the story of David defeating the giant Goliath with nothing but a small stone. Then there was Commander Ye-jin Baek, who somehow managed to defeat an entire Zentari infiltration unit by using psychological warfare techniques that should not have worked on our species but somehow did. The commander began walking around the room again, holding different tablets as he spoke. Each device showed stories of impossible human heroes, performing miraculous feats. Every battle, every planet, every encounter with humans, I have seen things that should have been impossible. Hyo-sung said, his voice growing stronger with each word. Humans lifting weights that should crush them when their friends are in danger. Humans surviving injuries that would kill any other species through nothing but willpower. He held up a tablet showing the story of a human who could heal others with just a touch. Humans accomplishing tasks that require teams of specialists doing it all alone because they had no other choice. Humans turning defeat into victory through methods that defy all logic and reason. Bo-ram looked at the tablet showing Atlas holding up the world commander. "Are you saying that their myths and legends are actually true?" Hyo-sung set down all the tablets and looked each of his officers directly in their eyes. "I am saying that humans do not create myths about impossible heroes. They create myths about what they call Tuesday." The impact of his words hit the young officers like a physical blow. They stared at the tablets scattered across the table with completely new understanding. Stories of humans performing impossible feats of ordinary people, becoming legends of individuals, standing against overwhelming odds and somehow winning. Tejo picked up a tablet showing the story of David and Goliath with shaking hands. If this is true, Commander, then what exactly are we fighting against? Hyo Sung looked at his young warriors and saw the fear and understanding growing in their eyes. We are fighting a species that turns their everyday heroes into bedtime stories for their children. We are fighting people who think the impossible is just another item on their daily to-do. Plus, the laughter that had filled the rec room hours earlier was completely gone, replaced by a silence heavy with terrible understanding. The young Zentari officers finally began to grasp what their veteran commander had been trying to tell them. Humans were not weak. They were not foolish. They were not creating impossible fantasies about mythical heroes. They were simply telling stories about what happened when ordinary humans had no other choice but to do extraordinary things. Dalsu stared at a tablet showing Hercules completing his 12 impossible tasks. Commander, if humans can do things like this, why do they not conquer the galaxy themselves? Hyo Sung smiled for the first time since the conversation began, but it was not a happy smile, because they do not want to conquer anyone. He said they only fight when they have to protect something or someone they care about. That is what makes them so dangerous. The commander picked up one final tablet, this one showing a story about humans, sacrificing themselves to save others. When humans fight, they are not fighting for territory or resources or glory. They are fighting for love, for family, for ideals they believe in. They fight like every battle might be their last chance to protect what matters most to them. Boram whispered. What does this mean for our war against them? Hyo Sung looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. We are not fighting soldiers, he said quietly. We are fighting parents, protecting their children, lovers defending their families, friends who would rather die than let harm come to those they care about. The tablets lay silent on the table, their screens still glowing with stories of impossible human heroes. But now the young Zentari warriors understood the terrible truth. These were not myths or legends or fantasy stories. These were instruction manuals. And somewhere in human space, millions of ordinary people were reading them and learning how to turn the impossible into just another Tuesday afternoon. The giant warship called Stellar Conquest moved through space like a metal mountain floating between the stars. Its hull was painted in the dark colors of the Galactic Defense Force, and weapons covered every surface. The ship was so large that entire cities could fit inside its cargo bays, and thousands of soldiers lived in its corridors. Commander Valak stood on the bridge looking out at the stars through the huge windows. The ship was heading toward a planet called Kepler 442b, where rebel forces had taken control of several mountain strongholds. Intelligence reports said the rebels had been preparing for months and had built impressive defensive positions. The alien soldiers on board were excited about the upcoming battle. They had spent weeks training together and were confident that their superior technology would make quick work of any enemy forces. The ship carried enough firepower to destroy entire cities, and the soldiers wore armor that could stop almost any weapon. In the lower decks of the ship, the human soldiers sat in a small compartment that had been assigned to them. The room was cramped and poorly lit, because nobody expected the humans to need much space. They were just observers after all. And observers did not need comfortable quarters. Commander Wu Jin sat quietly reading tactical reports on his datapad, while his younger soldiers tried to prepare their equipment. The humans had been given the oldest and most basic gear available since everyone assumed they would not actually be fighting. Taemin checked his rifle for the 20th time, even though he knew it was working perfectly. Sir, why do they treat us like we are children? Bo-Ra asked quietly. Her voice showed frustration but also confusion. She had trained hard to become a soldier, but now she felt like a tourist who was along for the ride. Commander Wu Jin looked up from his datapad with calm eyes that showed no anger or frustration. Bo-Ra, you must understand that respect is something that must be earned, not given. These alien soldiers have never seen humans in battle, so they judge us based on what they can see with their eyes. But we are real soldiers, Hyun-woo said from where he sat meditating in the corner. We have trained just as hard as they have, and we know how to fight. Why do they think we are weak? Because we are different. Wu Jin replied simply, we do not have their thick armor plating or their enhanced strength. We cannot see in the dark like some of them can, and we do not have natural weapons like claws or poisonous stings. They look at us and see creatures that need protection. Ginny finished cleaning her sidearm and holstered it carefully. I heard some of the alien soldiers talking yesterday. They said, our home planet must be a paradise world with no real dangers because we evolved to be so soft and helpless. Dong Hyun laughed quietly from his bunk. Those aliens have never been to Earth. They do not know about our hurricanes or earthquakes or the predators that used to hunt our ancestors. They think because we do not have scales or fur that we must come from an easy world where nothing ever tried to kill us. Su Jin looked up from the tactical manual she was studying. Do you think we will get a chance to prove ourselves, Commander? Or will we just sit in orbit and watch while they do all the fighting? Before Commander Wu Jin could answer, the ship's communication system crackled to life with an announcement from the bridge. All personnel, report to battle stations. We are approaching the target planet and beginning final preparations for the assault. The corridors of the stellar conquest filled with alien soldiers rushing to their positions. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the metal halls like thunder as hundreds of warriors prepared for battle. The aliens wore gleaming armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. Commander Valix entered the main briefing room where his officers were already assembled. The holographic display showed a detailed map of the target planet with 3 mountain peaks marked in red. These were the rebel strongholds that needed to be eliminated, gentlemen. Valix began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded many successful battles. Our mission is straightforward. We will assault these 3 positions simultaneously, using overwhelming firepower. The rebels have had months to prepare, but they are still using primitive weapons and basic defensive positions. Lieutenant Korth raised his hand. Commander, what about the weather reports? I am seeing some concerning data about storm systems in the target area. Valix waved dismissively. A few rain clouds will not stop the finest warriors in the galaxy. Our equipment is designed to work in any environment, and our training has prepared us for all conditions. The rebels chose a poor time to make their stand. The briefing continued with detailed discussions of troop movements and tactical objectives. The alien officers were confident that their advanced technology would make the battle quick and decisive. Their plasma weapons could punch through any armor, and their energy shields would protect them from enemy fire. Meanwhile, in their cramped quarters, the human soldiers listened to the ship's announcement system, which was broadcasting updates about the mission. They heard about the impressive firepower being brought to bear and the sophisticated battle plans that had been developed. Tae Min looked worried as he listened to the tactical briefing, sir. It sounds like they are planning to use a lot of energy weapons and electronic systems. What happens if something goes wrong with their technology, Commander? Wu Jin smiled slightly, showing that he had been thinking about the same thing. That is a very good question. Tae Min, what do you think we should do if their advanced systems fail? Bo-Ra understood immediately. We use what has always worked, she said. Simple weapons that do not need power cells or computer guidance, things that work even when everything else breaks down. Exactly, Wu Jin nodded. Our ancestors fought battles with weapons that never needed charging and armor that did not require maintenance. They won victories using tactics that did not depend on having better technology than the enemy. The ship suddenly shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Kepler 442b. Through the small porthole windows, the humans could see dark clouds swirling around the mountain peaks. Lightning flashed between the storm clouds, and the wind looked strong enough to knock aircraft out of the sky. Hyun-woo watched the storm with interest. Commander, that weather looks serious. Do you think it will affect the alien equipment? Most likely, Wu Jin replied. Energy weapons do not work well in electrical storms, and their targeting systems will have trouble with all that electromagnetic interference. But our equipment was designed by people who understood that battles are not always fought in perfect conditions. The communication system announced that all assault troops should prepare for deployment. The alien soldiers were gathering in the main hangar bays where their advanced dropships waited. The humans remained in their quarters because they had been ordered to stay aboard the ship during the actual fighting. Jinide felt frustrated as she listened to the sounds of preparation coming from other parts of the ship. "We are going to miss everything," she complained. "We will never get a chance to show what we can do if we are stuck up here watching from space." Commander Wu Jin checked his equipment one more time, and then looked at his soldiers with an expression that mixed patience with anticipation. "Do not worry, Jin," he said. "Quietly, I have a feeling that this mission will not go according to plan, and when it does not, we will be ready." The first wave of alien dropships launched from the stellar conquest, heading toward the storm-covered mountains below. The ships looked impressive as they flew through the dark clouds with their energy shields glowing and their weapon systems charged for battle. But as the dropships approached their landing zones, something unexpected happened. The storm was much worse than the weather reports had indicated, and strange energy readings were coming from the rebel positions. The rebels had somehow acquired technology that was not supposed to exist on this backward planet. Commander Valix watched from the bridge as his assault force entered the storm clouds. The first reports were concerning. The electromagnetic interference was stronger than expected, and several dropships were already reporting equipment malfunctions. Sir, came a worried voice from the communications station. "We are losing contact with several assault teams. The storm is interfering with our communication systems more than we anticipated." Valix frowned but remained confident. "A little static will not stop professional soldiers," he declared. "The assault will continue as planned. Our troops have faced worse conditions than a simple thunderstorm." But down in their cramped quarters, Commander Wu Jin was checking his weapons and signaling for his soldiers to prepare their gear. He had been in enough battles to recognize the signs when a perfect plan was about to become a disaster, and when that happened, someone would need to step in and save the day. The storm hit the alien assault force like an angry giant swatting at flying insects. Lightning cracked across the dark sky in brilliant white flashes that lit up the mountain peaks for brief moments before plunging everything back into darkness. The wind howled between the rocky cliffs with such force that it could knock a grown warrior off his feet. Sergeant Zilf landed hard on the rocky ground as his dropship crashed into the mountainside. The four-armed warrior crawled out of the wreckage, with his combat suit sparking and smoking around him. The advanced armor that was supposed to protect him from any weapon was now nothing more than dead weight on his back, all around him. Other alien soldiers were discovering the same terrible truth. Their energy weapons were failing. Their targeting systems were going crazy, and their communication devices were producing nothing but static noise. The electromagnetic pulses from the lightning strikes were frying every piece of advanced technology they carried. "This is impossible," Zilf shouted over the howling wind as he tried to restart his plasma rifle. The weapon had cost more than most soldiers made in a year and was supposed to work in any environment. But now, it was just an expensive piece of metal that refused to fire. Lieutenant Korth stumbled through the rocky terrain with his blue skin pale from shock and fear. His energy shield generator was dead, his helmet display was blank, and his backup power cells had all been drained by the electromagnetic interference. He felt more helpless than a newborn child, from concealed positions all around the mountain. The rebel forces opened fire with weapons that worked perfectly in the storm conditions. They used old-fashioned projectile rifles that fired metal bullets powered by chemical explosives. Their weapons had no electronic parts to fail and no energy systems to be disrupted. The sound of gunfire echoed off the mountain walls as rebel soldiers emerged from hidden caves and tunnels that the alien intelligence reports had never detected. The rebels had been preparing for this battle for months, and they had chosen their technology specifically to counter the advanced weapons of the Galactic Defense Force fall back to the landing zone. Lieutenant Korth screamed into his dead communicator before remembering that nobody could hear him. The alien soldiers began a desperate retreat as more rebel forces appeared from positions that should have been impossible to reach. Captain Drex tried to coordinate a defensive position, but his rock-like armor was too heavy to move quickly in the rough terrain. His people were used to fighting on flat ground with clear fields of fire, but these mountains were full of hiding places and ambush points that favored the defenders. The alien soldiers had trained for battles where their superior technology would give them every advantage. They had practiced fighting enemies who used similar weapons and similar tactics, but now they faced an enemy who had deliberately chosen to fight with older, simpler methods that actually worked better in these conditions. Sergeant Zilf found himself pinned down behind a boulder with 3 other alien soldiers. Their weapons were completely useless and they had no way to call for help. The rebels were closing in from multiple directions using tactics that seemed to come from ancient military manuals. "How are they doing this?" one of the trapped soldiers asked in panic. "We have the best training in the galaxy and equipment that cost billions of credits. How are these primitive rebels defeating us? Because we forgot something important." Zilf realized with growing horror. "We forgot that wars are not won by the side with the best technology. They are won by the side that can adapt when their technology fails." On the command ship orbiting above the planet, Commander Valix watched his tactical display with growing alarm. Red markers showed where his units were being destroyed or forced to retreat. The carefully planned assault was turning into a complete disaster. "So reported the communications officer, we have lost contact with over half of our ground forces. The electromagnetic interference is too strong for our systems to penetrate." Commander Valix felt his confidence crumbling like a sandcastle hit by ocean waves. His elite alien troops were supposed to be the finest warriors in the galaxy, but they were being defeated by rebels using weapons that belonged in a museum. "Request immediate evacuation support." The communication officer continued. "The surviving units are requesting emergency pickup from multiple locations. They cannot complete the mission with their current equipment status." From the back of the command bridge, a quiet voice spoke up. Commander Valix turned to see Commander Wu Jin standing at attention with his human soldiers behind him. The older human looked calm and ready for action, while his younger troops checked their simple weapons and basic equipment. "We request permission to deploy to assist in the rescue operation," Wu Jin said with the steady voice of someone who had seen many battles go wrong. "The electromagnetic interference will not affect our equipment the way it has affected yours." Valix stared at the human commander with a mixture of desperation and disbelief. "You want to go down there into that storm with nothing but primitive weapons? Your soldiers will be slaughtered just like mine." Commander Wu Jin shook his head slightly. "Our weapons were designed by people who understood that technology can fail," he said calmly. "We have trained for exactly this type of situation. Our ancestors fought wars in conditions much worse than what is happening down there." Behind Wu Jin, the other human soldiers stood ready for deployment. Tai Min carried his simple rifle with confidence, while Bo Ra had medical supplies ready to treat wounded soldiers. Hyun Woo looked focused and alert, like a predator preparing to hunt. Sir Jin spoke up respectfully. "Our equipment does not need power cells or computer guidance. It will work the same way in that storm as it does on a clear day. We can bring your soldiers home." Dong Hyun added, "Our people have been fighting in bad weather and difficult terrain for thousands of years. We know how to move through mountains and how to fight enemies who have every advantage except experience." Su Jin finished checking her gear and looked up at Commander Valix with steady eyes. "Commander, every human soldier learns about battles where our ancestors faced impossible odds and won anyway. Today we can show you that those stories were not just legends." Commander Valix looked at the tactical display again, where more red markers appeared as his forces continued to be destroyed. The storm would last for hours, and his advanced alien troops were helpless without their technology. He was watching his career end in complete failure, but these humans, with their simple weapons and basic equipment, were offering to go into that same storm and rescue his soldiers. They had no energy shields, no plasma weapons, and no advanced armor. Yet something in their attitude suggested they actually believed they could succeed where his elite forces had failed. The communication system crackled with another desperate message from the planet's surface. "This is Captain Drex. We are surrounded and taking heavy casualties. Request immediate assistance. Our position will not hold much longer." Commander Valix looked at the humans again and saw something he had not noticed before. Their equipment might be simple, but their eyes held the confidence of warriors who had never learned to accept defeat. Their ancestors had won impossible victories not because they had better weapons, but because they had something that could not be bought or built. "Very well, Wu Jin," Valix said finally. "You have permission to deploy, but understand that if you fail down there, no one will be able to rescue you. The storm will make it impossible to send additional support." Commander Wu Jin saluted with military precision. "Thank you, sir. We will bring your soldiers home." As the humans prepared to deploy into the storm, Valix realized that he was about to discover whether the legendary human warriors were real or just stories told by a primitive species. Either way, he would soon know if there was more to warfare than having the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The human dropship cut through the storm like a knife slicing through dark water. Commander Wu Jin and his 6 soldiers rode in silence as lightning flashed outside their small windows. The ship had no fancy shields or advanced navigation systems, but it flew steady and true toward the battle zone below. Unlike the alien dropships that had crashed or been forced to retreat, the human transport was built to handle rough conditions. The pilot used old-fashioned instruments that worked without computer assistance, and the engine ran on simple fuel that could not be disrupted by electromagnetic pulses. Taemin checked his rifle one final time as they approached the landing zone. The weapon was basic but reliable, with moving parts that had been tested in countless battles. It fired metal bullets using chemical powder, just like the weapons his grandfather had carried in wars decades ago. "Commander, we are approaching the first rescue point," Bo-Ra reported, as she studied a paper map instead of electronic displays. 3 alien soldiers are trapped in a rocky outcrop surrounded by rebel forces. Wu Jin nodded and looked at his team. Each soldier knew their role without needing complex communication systems. They had practiced these rescue operations using hand signals and simple tactics that did not depend on technology working perfectly. The dropship landed hard on the rocky ground, and the humans immediately spread out into positions they had rehearsed hundreds of times. Hyunwoo took point, moving through the terrain with the natural grace of someone who had grown up hiking in mountains. The storm continued to rage around them, but the humans moved through it like they belonged there. Rain soaked their simple uniforms, and wind tried to knock them down, but they kept advancing toward the sounds of gunfire. The electromagnetic interference that had crippled the alien forces meant nothing to soldiers whose equipment had no electronics to fail. Ginny moved along the eastern ridge carrying extra ammunition and medical supplies. Her boots found secure footing on rocks that would have been impossible to navigate wearing heavy alien armor. She could hear the trapped alien soldiers calling for help from somewhere. Ahead through the darkness and rain, Dong Hyun spotted the rebel positions that had the aliens pinned down. The enemy fighters were using the storm as cover, thinking that no rescue force could operate in these conditions. They had not expected anyone to approach using tactics from before the age of advanced technology. Sujin took a position where she could provide covering fire with her sniper rifle. The weapon had a simple scope that worked without batteries and a bolt-action mechanism that functioned perfectly even when soaked with rain. She could see the rebel leaders coordinating their attack on the trapped aliens. Commander Wu Jin studied the battlefield and made quick decisions based on experience rather than computer analysis. He could see that the rebels had set up their ambush, assuming that any rescue force would use the same high-tech approach as the original assault. "Listen carefully," Wu Jin whispered to his team using hand signals that every human soldier learned. "In basic training, we are going to show these rebels and these aliens what real warfare looks like. What happened next would be talked about in military schools across the galaxy for generations." The humans did not try to match the rebels' firepower or use superior technology to overwhelm them. Instead, they used tactics that had been developed over thousands of years of human conflict. Yunwoo created a diversion on the eastern slope by making noise and firing shots that drew the rebel attention in that direction. While the enemy focused on this apparent attack, Jinny and Dong Hyan moved through positions that should have been impossible to reach. The rebels found themselves confused as the human attacks came from directions they had not expected. Tai Min appeared behind their left flank, moving through terrain that their scouts had declared impassable. Bo-Ra came up from below using a route that required crawling through spaces too small for normal soldiers. Su Jin began picking off rebel leaders with precise shots that came from a position the enemy had not even known existed. Her rifle cracked through the storm with deadly accuracy as one by one the rebel commanders fell. The trapped alien soldiers watched in amazement. As the human rescue unfolded around them, Sergeant Zilf had given up hope when his weapons failed and his communication went dead. But now he saw soldiers moving with purpose and confidence through conditions that had defeated his elite forces. "How are they doing this?" Zilf whispered to Lieutenant Korth, who was crouched beside him in their rocky shelter. "The humans are fighting like they can see in the dark, and like the storm does not even exist." The rebels tried to respond to the human attack. but found that their enemies seemed to anticipate every move. When they shifted forces to counter one threat another, attack appeared from an unexpected direction. The humans were fighting like they had studied this exact battle beforehand. Commander Wu Jin moved through the rebel positions like a ghost in the storm. His simple equipment worked perfectly in conditions that had crippled advanced technology. He carried backup weapons for his backup weapons, and every piece of gear had been chosen because it was reliable rather than impressive. Tai Min flanked a group of rebels who were trying to surround the trapped aliens. His approach was so quiet that the enemy soldiers did not know he was there until his rifle started firing. He used the terrain and the storm to mask his movements in ways that no electronic camouflage could match. The coordination between the human soldiers was flawless. Even though they had no working radio communication, they used signals and movements that they had practiced until they became instinctive. When one soldier's weapon jammed, he switched to a backup without missing a beat. Ra reached the trapped aliens first and immediately began treating their wounds with medical supplies that worked, without power or computer guidance. Her training had taught her to handle injuries using techniques that had saved lives for centuries, before advanced medical technology existed. "You are safe now," she told Sergeant Zilf as she bandaged a cut on his arm. "The bleeding will stop and you will be able to move in a few minutes." "But how did you get here?" Zilf asked in amazement. "My people could not even communicate with each other in this storm. How are you coordinating such a complex rescue operation?" Ra smiled as she continued working. "We learned to fight as a team before we had any technology to help us," she explained. "Human soldiers have been rescuing each other from impossible situations for thousands of years. We just used the old methods within 30 minutes the rebel position was completely overrun. The enemy fighters found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to know their every move and that appeared wherever they were least prepared. The humans had turned the rebels' own defensive positions against them. Jin Ae and Dong Hyun secured the evacuation route, while Su Jin continued to provide covering fire from her concealed position. The rebels began to retreat as their carefully planned ambush fell apart under pressure from soldiers, who fought like they came from a different era. Hyun Woo helped the wounded alien soldiers move toward the extraction point where their dropship waited. The aliens leaned on him for support, amazed that someone so much smaller than them could be so steady and strong in these terrible conditions. Commander Wu Jin made sure all the alien soldiers were safe before signaling for his team to withdraw. The rescue operation had been completed exactly as planned, with minimal casualties and maximum effectiveness. The humans had accomplished what the advanced alien forces could not. As they loaded the rescued aliens into their dropship, Lieutenant Korth grabbed Commander Wu Jin by the arm. "Sir, how did you do what our elite forces could not accomplish? How did you succeed where we failed so completely?" Wu Jin looked at the alien officer with calm eyes that showed no pride or arrogance. "We succeeded because we never forgot that the most important weapon any soldier carries is not technology, but knowledge," he said quietly. "We know how to adapt when everything goes wrong, because that is what humans have always done." The dropship lifted off into the storm, carrying its cargo of rescued alien soldiers who had learned that there was more to warfare than having the best equipment. Some victories belonged to those who remembered that courage and skill could overcome any technological advantage. The first light of dawn broke through the storm clouds as Commander Wu Jin and his team completed their final rescue mission. The mountain peaks stood silent now, with all 3 rebel strongholds captured and the surviving enemy forces scattered into the wilderness. The electromagnetic storm still raged, but it no longer mattered because the battle was over. On the command deck of the Stellar Conquest Commander, Valix stared at his tactical display in complete amazement. The screen showed green markers across all the mountain positions indicating that the mission had been accomplished. The human soldiers had done something that his elite alien forces could not manage with all their advanced technology. Sir, the communications officer reported the humans have secured all primary objectives and established safe perimeters around each mountain stronghold. The rebel forces have either surrendered or retreated into the deep wilderness where they pose no further threat. Valix walked to the large windows and looked down at the planet below where tiny lights marked the human positions scattered across the mountain range. His own forces, those magnificent alien warriors with their superior training and expensive equipment, were being evacuated by human medics and protected by human guards. The rescue operations had continued throughout the night, as Commander Wu Jin and his soldiers moved from one trapped unit to another. Each time they accomplished the impossible using nothing but basic weapons, simple tactics, and the kind of determination that could not be purchased or programmed. Sergeant Zilf limped into the command center with his arm in a sling, and his pride even more badly wounded than his body. He had been rescued by Bo-Ra, who had crawled through enemy fire to reach his position, and then carried him to safety. While rebel bullets whistled around them, Commander Valak Zilf said quietly, "I need to report something important about the human soldiers." Valak turned from the window with an expression that mixed curiosity with embarrassment. "Go ahead, Sergeant. But I think I can guess what you are going to tell me. Sir, when my equipment failed and my weapons stopped working, I thought I was going to die." On that mountain, Zilf continued, "The rebels had us surrounded and we had no way to fight back or call for help. Then the humans arrived." The four-armed alien warrior paused as he remembered the events of the night. "The humans moved through that storm like it was a clear sunny day," he said with growing amazement. "They knew exactly where to step and how to use the terrain to their advantage. It was like watching masters at work." Lieutenant Korth entered the command center with several other alien officers who had been rescued during the night. His blue skin was pale with exhaustion, but his eyes showed a new understanding that had not been there before the battle commander. "The human called Su Jin saved my entire squad," Korth reported. "She appeared out of nowhere and eliminated 6 rebel soldiers with 6 shots from a rifle that looked like it belonged in a museum. But every shot was perfect. Even in that terrible storm, Captain Drex followed behind the other officers, moving slowly, because his rock-like armor had been damaged during the fighting." The massive alien warrior looked humbled as he approached Commander Valak. "Sir, the human soldiers did something that I did not think was possible," Drex said in his deep, rumbling voice. "They coordinated a complex rescue operation without any electronic communication. They used hand signals and movements that they had obviously practiced until they became automatic." More alien soldiers continued to arrive in the command center, each with their own story about how the humans had saved them from certain death. The stories all had the same theme. Warriors who should have been helpless had instead been the most effective fighters on the battlefield. Commander Valak listened to report after report of human courage and tactical brilliance. Each story made it clearer that everything the alien forces had believed about warfare was incomplete. They had forgotten that battles were won by soldiers, not by equipment. The bridge doors opened and Commander Wu Jin entered with his team behind him. The human soldiers looked tired but satisfied as they reported for debriefing. Their simple uniforms were muddy and torn, but they carried themselves with the quiet confidence of professionals who had completed a difficult job. "Sir, mission accomplished," Wu Jin said with a respectful salute. "All alien personnel have been rescued and evacuated from the combat zone. The rebel forces have been neutralized and the strategic objectives have been secured." Commander Valak studied the human officer and his soldiers with new eyes. These were the same people his forces had mocked just days earlier. The same soldiers who had struggled with oversized equipment and been dismissed as too weak for real combat. "Commander Wu Jin," Valak said formally, "I owe you and your soldiers an apology. We judged your people based on appearances and assumptions, rather than on your actual capabilities." Wu Jin shook his head respectfully. "Commander, there is no need for apologies. Everyone makes judgments based on what they can see. Our people look weak compared to your warriors because we evolved differently, but evolution taught us to survive using our minds rather than our bodies." Tay Men stepped forward and spoke with the confidence of someone who had proven himself in battle. "Sir, we understand why you thought we were helpless. Most species develop strength or speed or natural armor to survive. But humans developed something different." "What did your people develop?" Bo-Ra asked one of the alien officers. "Problem-solving skills," Tai Min replied. "We learned to adapt to any situation and to use whatever tools were available. We became good at finding solutions when everything seemed impossible." Yun, Wu added. "Our ancestors faced ice ages and droughts and predators that were bigger and stronger than they were. But instead of giving up, they learned to work together and to use their environment as a weapon." Jin A smiled as she remembered the night battle. The rebels thought they had every advantage because our equipment looked primitive compared to yours. But they forgot that wars are not won by the side with the best weapons. They are won by the side that knows how to use their weapons most effectively. Dong-hyun continued the explanation. Human soldiers learned that every piece of equipment can fail, and every plan can go wrong. So we always prepare backup plans for our backup plans. When one approach does not work, we try another approach. Sujin finished the thought. We have been fighting impossible battles for thousands of years, not because we are naturally stronger or faster than our enemies, but because we never learned how to give up. Commander Valix realized that he was witnessing something historic. The alien forces had learned a lesson that would change how they thought about warfare forever. These humans had just demonstrated that superior technology meant nothing without the wisdom to use it properly. From this day forward, Valix announced to his assembled officers human soldiers will be welcomed as equals in the Galactic Defense Force. We have learned that strength comes in many forms, and that the greatest weapon any warrior can carry is the knowledge of how to adapt when everything else fails. The alien soldiers in the command center began to applaud with a respect that was completely different from the mockery they had shown just days earlier. They had seen the legendary human warriors in action, and learned that those impossible stories had been true all along. Sergeant Zilf approached Commander Wu Jin, with his forearms spread in the traditional salute of his people. Sir, would you be willing to teach us some of your tactics? We want to learn how to fight the way humans fight. Lieutenant Korth nodded agreement. We have always relied on our technology to win battles for us, but you have shown us that the most important battles are won here. He pointed to his head, and here he pointed to his heart. Commander Wu Jin looked around at the assembled alien warriors who had learned to respect human capabilities through hard experience. Gentlemen, he said quietly, we would be honored to share our knowledge with warriors who have proven themselves worthy of respect. From that day forward, the stories of human soldiers spread throughout the galaxy, not as jokes told by superior species, but as inspiration for warriors who wanted to understand what it meant to be truly undefeated. And, in quiet moments between battles, alien soldiers would ask their human comrades to tell them about Earth, where impossible victories were just another day at the office.